In the 10th year since Aiden and I went from school uniforms to wedding dresses, I discovered he was cheating with a female subordinate from his company. I didn't cry or make a scene, I just calmly presented a pregnancy test report. Aiden was overjoyed, hugged me, and swore he would never betray me again in this life. Peace prevailed until our daughter turned 2. A video clip of Aiden sweetly kissing a new intern from his company on the big screen at an overseas concert suddenly went viral online. Once again, I didn't argue or make a fuss. I just quietly transferred the final payment to the photography team and the internet water army. I will not let go of my property or my daughter. The first time I discovered Aiden's infidelity was 3 years ago. I found a hotel invoice in his coat pocket. The date was when I was on a business trip, and the room type was a double bed. He explained without changing his expression that it was booked for a client. The lie was clumsy. After all, no CEO of a large company needs to personally book hotels for clients. But I didn't expose him. The next day, I went to his company under the pretext of delivering afternoon tea. In the pantry, I met the secretary from the finance department. She deliberately adjusted her collar in front of me, revealing ambiguous fresh red marks on her collarbone and a Cartier necklace identical to the one Aiden gave me for our 10th anniversary. "Mrs. Wendy," she said, bending down to place the cup, the necklace swaying gently. "What a coincidence, I also love this brand the most." "Really? Our tastes are quite similar," I replied, clenching my fingers tightly and forcing a smile. I almost fled in panic. It wasn't just the necklace. The diamond watch on her wrist, the perfume she wore, the length and color of her hair, probably even the man was the same. That night, with the sound of water in the bathroom, for the first time in 10 years, I checked Aiden's phone. In the photo album, there was a picture of that girl wearing my camisole nightgown, lying on our master bedroom bed with a dazed look, which stung my eyes. The date showed it was last weekend when I went back to my parents' home. Opening Facebook, there were flirtatious messages, hotel booking records, luxury purchase receipts, and the most fatal, chat records of Aiden consulting a divorce lawyer. "If I start transferring assets now, can I be sure she won't find out?" he asked. After 10 years of relationship, I didn't expect that he wouldn't even want a decent ending. That night, with my back to him, I bit my lower lip until it bled, forcibly holding back my tears. Early the next morning, I threw away the contraceptives and went to the hospital for an ovulation induction injection. In the year when Aiden was busiest with his career, I had an unexpected miscarriage. He felt very guilty for not taking good care of me, hugged me, and cried, saying we would be dinks and not let me suffer the pain of childbirth again. Actually, he didn't know that I had long seen his medical report showing congenital oligospermia. He knew very well that the miscarriage was due to poor embryo quality. Because I loved him, I didn't expose it and willingly took contraceptives for several years. But after accompanying him from obscurity to becoming the CEO of a listed company, giving up my own opportunities for overseas assignments and promotions, how could I be willing to hand him over to someone else? I took the initiative to convert all our liquid assets into insurance, funds, real estate, and even gold and Bitcoin. When Aiden discovered this and rushed home in a rage, I calmly confronted him. On both ends of the dining table, one side had evidence of his infidelity, and the other had my early pregnancy diagnosis. I bet that he, being the only son for 3 generations, would not give up what might be his only chance to be a father in this life. I won the bet. After a brief moment of daze, Aiden subconsciously became ecstatic. "I'm going to be a father." He jumped up excitedly like a child. Then he knelt down, hugged my waist, and pressed his face against my flat abdomen. "Wendy, forgive me this time. I swear I will be a good father. Give me some time to sort this out, and I will never betray you again in this life." Aiden didn't return all night, dealing with his mess. Everything seemed to have settled, but I, who had gotten what I wanted, bit the corner of the quilt and cried all night. My marriage, my love, in the end, could only be preserved through scheming and calculation. This episode in our marriage came to an abrupt end. I never saw that girl again, and whether she was fired or transferred, I didn't care. Life returned to peace, and Aiden seemed no different from before. Perhaps it was because he was a new father, or perhaps out of guilt, he was even more caring and indulgent towards me than before. He accompanied me to every prenatal checkup and booked the most expensive postpartum care center for me. He also signed the unequal contract I drafted. If the marriage broke down, the custody of the child and 70% of the property would belong to me. After our daughter was born, no matter how busy he was, he insisted on doing everything himself. Everyone said he was a good father and a good husband. But as the saying goes, a leopard can't change its spots. The peace only lasted for 2 years. On our daughter's 2nd birthday, we held a party at our suburban villa, and many of Aiden's colleagues came. I carried the sliced cake upstairs, intending to give it to Aiden, who had gone upstairs to take a work call. From the slightly open door of the children's room came suppressed panting that didn't belong to a child. Gently. I recognized it was Vanessa, the new intern at the company, like a fresh and tender lily, personally brought by Aiden. Through the crack in the door, I saw Aiden's tall figure completely enveloping the petite Vanessa in the corner. He had one hand against the wall, the other tightly around her waist, bending down to kiss her deeply. Vanessa stood on tiptoe to meet him, her slender arms wrapped around his neck. The afternoon sunlight illuminated Vanessa's intoxicated, closed eyes and Aiden's enraptured profile. Such an expression was so familiar to me, having appeared countless times and nights that belonged to me. "Do you want it? You little slut. I'll come to you tonight," Aiden murmured in her ear, biting her earlobe. My fingertips trembled suddenly, and the cream from the edge of the plate smeared onto the back of my hand, cold and sticky. My heart felt as if it was being gripped and twisted tightly. The sudden feeling of blood draining made my vision go dark. I bit my lower lip hard, slowly and silently stepping back. Leaning against the cold wall, I took a deep breath. Downstairs, the sound of my daughter's laughter and the guests' clamor surged like a tide. I raised my hand and slowly, forcefully wiped away the glaring white cream on the back of my hand with my fingertips, erasing the dirty mark. When I looked up again, the storm in my eyes had been forcibly suppressed, leaving only calm. I adjusted my skirt and went downstairs as if nothing had happened. After the party, Aiden indeed found an excuse to leave for overtime work. "So busy lately?" I leaned against the entrance, my fingers brushing over the lipstick mark on his shirt collar, whether intentionally or unintentionally left there. It was Chanel's new shade, a peachy pink, too young for me to use. But I didn't remind him. "There's a new project rushing for financing plans," Aiden said, looking down to change his shoes. When he looked up, his expression was normal, and he even took the time to kiss my cheek. "After this busy period, I'll take you and the baby to Hokkaido to soak in hot springs and see the snow." I lowered my eyes and pursed my lips, feeling as if my heart had been splashed with ice, freezing and tightening. I let out an almost imperceptible scoff, and when I looked up, my eyes were filled with just the right amount of smile. "Okay," I said calmly. Finding Vanessa's social media account wasn't difficult, but in recent years, Aiden had been in a high position, walking on thin ice, and his behavior had become increasingly cautious. She certainly wouldn't dare to leave any traces on domestic social platforms. Remembering her overseas study background, I easily found her Instagram account. The latest post was from half an hour ago. A candlelight dinner that young girls love, with a hand resting on the other side of the table, the knuckles distinct. Even without the wedding ring, I recognized that hand, I had held it for over a decade. Scrolling down, there was a sweet selfie of her in front of the floor-to-ceiling window of the Grand Hyatt Hotel, where Aiden had stayed for a whole week during his business trip to Shenzhen. The most ironic thing was that every night, from the same perspective, he would video call me and our daughter, playing the role of a good husband and father. 2 months ago, she posted a photo of their hands tightly clasped, with a familiar watch strap visible on the man's wrist. The caption read, "Time only has meaning after meeting you." The love Vanessa showed off was pretty much what I had imagined. They had been together for 3 months, in the phase of being inseparable and shameless. Having lived abroad, the girl was open-minded, even posting post-coital photos, though the key parts were censored. The process was clearly passionate and intense. I endured the nausea and browsed through them carefully, finding only one useful piece of information. She posted screenshots of 2 concert ticket orders for next week. Located abroad, Aiden had casually mentioned a few days ago that he was going on a business trip to that southern hemisphere country for a week. My heart felt as if it was soaked in ice water, each beat bringing a dull, throbbing pain. 8 years of marriage, 13 years of relationship. Countless days and nights of preparing meals for him, taking care of his sick parents, the tears in his eyes when our daughter first called him daddy. These fragments flashed before my eyes, only to be shattered by his infidelity once again. My daughter was mumbling in her sleep in the next room. I snapped back to reality and quickly went to her crib. She was sleeping with rosy cheeks, a sweet smile on her face even in her dreams. Tears surged out unexpectedly, sliding over my lips, tasting the salty despair. I covered my mouth, afraid of disturbing the child, but my body couldn't stop trembling. For the trampled trust, for my daughter's potentially shattered fairy tale, and for the foolish self who believed in love until death. Outside the window, the city lights were bright. After a long time, my emotions finally calmed down. I wiped away the tear stains on my face, and when I looked up again, my eyes were clear, almost coldly so, washed by tears. Online, there are descriptions of the real situation of middle-aged couples: 0 communication during the day, 0 interaction at night, inseparable from their phones, life lacking any sense of ritual. Compared to that, Aiden and I, despite sleeping in the same bed with different dreams, seemed to be doing relatively well. Even if he had affairs outside, our daughter was still his only biological child. For her sake, he wouldn't bring those filthy matters to my attention. Moreover, we had signed an agreement: if we divorced, 70% of the property and our daughter would belong to me. If he had any sense, he wouldn't divorce. I swallowed my grievances. Our daughter needed a complete family, needed to grow up with both parents. I was willing to cooperate with him in playing the role of a model couple in front of others. I didn't expect that Aiden would take the initiative to come clean. The next evening, he sent our daughter back to his parents' house and took me to the restaurant we often went to when we were dating. I naively thought he felt guilty and intended to return to the family and mend our relationship. But as soon as the appetizers were served, he placed the divorce agreement on the table and pushed it towards me. "Wendy, let's divorce." At that moment, I was still immersed in the joy of thinking our marriage had a turning point. Hearing this, my smile froze on my face. "I don't love you anymore, Wendy." I knew he had stopped loving me a long time ago and had been telling myself to lower my expectations. I was mentally prepared, even if one day we slept in separate rooms or shared a bed without intimacy, one like an abstinent monk, the other like a nun with a still heart, I could endure it. I was in my 30s, still relatively young, but the focus of my life was no longer love. The arrival of the child, the pressure of work, the trivialities of life. I thought Aiden and I had the same understanding, but I didn't expect him to propose divorce. Our daughter, where? Aiden now cared only about fame, fortune, and our daughter. I didn't believe he had the courage to abandon them. But the next second, you can rest assured, I won't go back on my word. According to the agreement, 70% of our joint property and the custody of our daughter will be yours. I stared at Aiden's handsome and refined face, and the first thing that surged up was not sadness, but absurdity. How unbearable must I be that he would rather give up the fortune he had worked so hard to earn and his only daughter, just to find every possible way to escape from me. You have someone else. What kind of person is worth you abandoning your wife and daughter without hesitation? At this point, there was no need to whitewash the situation anymore. Aiden didn't answer directly. He sighed, looked straight at me, his eyes filled with exhaustion. "Wendy, actually, 3 years ago, I thought about separating, but at that time, you were pregnant, and I couldn't do that. You're great. You take good care of the home, my parents, the baby, and me. But life with you is too oppressive, whereas with her, I feel a relaxation I've never had before." Thinking of the shopping list Vanessa posted on Instagram: sexy lingerie, intimate toys, aphrodisiacs, everything one could imagine, and she generously shared her experiences. Such a girl probably does make men more excited than a lifeless middle-aged wife like me. Looking at Aiden's longing expression when mentioning that girl, I suddenly remembered the girl I drove away 3 years ago. So, Aiden never lacked love, his love just never lasted long. His love was consuming, his passion always short-lived. Soon he would get tired, annoyed, and weary. It was a cycle. I swallowed the bitterness in my throat and smiled wryly. "All right, I'll sign when you return from your business trip." Aiden's furrowed brows relaxed. "Thank you for fulfilling my wish, Wendy. As for financial compensation, feel free to ask." I just shook my head. 13 years of my best youth, I gave everything. How much would be enough? Since Aiden made such a choice for a woman, for the rest of his life, I only want him to have nothing and be unable to get what he desires. A meticulous plan quickly took sentence formed. Since I work in the media industry, it took almost no effort to bribe the concert's execution team. On the day of the concert, ensure that Aiden and Vanessa appear on the main stage screen for at least 15 seconds, with the camera clearly capturing their faces. I also contacted a water army company and hundreds of marketing accounts, prepared the press release in advance, and made sure that this video would explode on Chinese social networks within an hour after the performance. For the next week, everything was calm. Aiden deliberately reduced his social engagements and overtime, probably wanting to leave some memories for our daughter. He even took time to take me and our daughter to see a new children's play. I also pretended to be calm, continuing to wear a gentle mask, playing the role of loving parents in front of our daughter. Perhaps because I didn't sign immediately, Vanessa became anxious. She started sending me photos of her and Aiden together every day. They traveled together, dined together, walked the dog together, and even sent indecent bedroom photos. Hundreds of photos, each showing Aiden's expression full of tenderness and indulgence. A dull pain rose in my heart. Aiden used to look at me with such affectionate and loving eyes. She openly provoked, "Aiden says he feels nauseous when he sees you. Don't you have any dignity? Why are you still clinging and refusing to divorce?" She humiliated me, calling me old and ugly, and cursed my daughter as a money-losing commodity. I didn't go to Aiden to complain, I endured it silently. Young girls can be reckless and sharp-tongued when desperate, but it's no big deal. She handed me the evidence of Aiden's infidelity on a platter, and I was grateful. I quietly organized the evidence of Aiden's marital infidelity and contacted the best divorce lawyer to prepare for litigation. I wanted more than 70% of Aiden's property. I wanted him to leave with nothing. As for Vanessa, since she loved Aiden so much, I believed she would be willing to share joys and sorrows with him after he was disgraced and left with nothing. When the video of Aiden and Vanessa kissing at the overseas concert hit the hot search, I was reading a picture book to my daughter in the children's room. Aiden's incoming call lit up on my phone screen again and again, still struggling desperately. The video had been forwarded over 1 million times. The head of the water army company sent a message, "As per your request, we captured Mr. Aiden's wedding ring on his ring finger." I turned off my daughter's bedside lamp and opened the web page in the dark. On the main stage screen of the concert, the camera captured Aiden and Vanessa kissing sweetly. Amid the boos from the audience, Aiden opened his eyes and saw his own face on the big screen. Shocked, panicked, his blood ran cold. Aiden instinctively pushed Vanessa away, covering his face with his hands and crouching with his back to her. He could never have imagined that his affair would be captured by the concert camera and projected onto the big screen. He certainly couldn't have imagined that those fleeting seconds at a concert abroad would become a blazing fire, igniting the entire Chinese internet in less than an hour. This clip went viral on mainstream Chinese social media platforms, becoming a viral phenomenon. Netizens joked, "They're either cheating or just too shy." In just a few seconds, Aiden's 8-figure Richard Miller watch stands out. As his wife, I had no idea he had such financial resources. It seems he had been preparing for divorce long ago, hiding assets. His current net worth far exceeded my imagination, and it wasn't under his name. After going abroad, thinking no one cared, he indulged with Vanessa without restraint, living extravagantly. Netizens circled his watch, curiously wondering which rich list he was on. Without needing my hired water army to step in, soon some eagle-eyed netizens locked onto Aiden's identity, CEO of a foreign-funded group, a young talent, a rising star in the industry. Married. Past press releases about him doting on his wife and daughter, and speeches at charity galas were dug up and used to slap him in the face, becoming excellent satirical material. Topics like scumbag kisses mistress at concert and CEO's infidelity live broadcast instantly dominated the hot search. High-definition clips from the concert were wildly reposted and remixed, with views soaring into the tens of millions. In turn, Vanessa's identity was also exposed, with screenshots of her flaunting wealth and ambiguous comments on social media flying everywhere. The label of knowingly being the third party was firmly attached to her. Netizens were furious. CEO using his position to unspoken rules with an intern, trash. Publicly making out on the concert screen? This is the greatest humiliation to the original spouse and child. The doting husband persona collapses on the spot. The most disgusting scumbag of the year. Check his income sources. A CEO's salary is at most 7 figures, and I heard he's a Phoenix man with no family background. How can he afford a Richard Mille worth tens of millions? Don't tell me he's using taxpayers' money to keep a mistress. A CEO of a foreign-controlled enterprise with this level of consumption? The mistress buys Van Cleef Arpels, stays at Grand Hyatt, watches sky-high priced concerts overseas? Is this compliant? Has it been audited? Under the guidance of the Water Army, insiders revealed that his original spouse came from a well-off family and had been in love with him since college. Over the years, to support his career, despite her background as a media student from a prestigious university, she silently became his virtuous wife behind the scenes, sacrificing her own career for the family. Some even dug up my social media account, which was full of posts about my husband and child, showing a peaceful life. The whole internet sympathized with me. Sister, you're beautiful alone. Sister, dump the scumbag quickly. The social media accounts of the group where Aiden and Vanessa worked were flooded with angry comments. The entire internet was cursing him, the company's stock price plummeted, and the headquarters intervened to investigate whether he had abused his power to seek improper benefits for Vanessa. The whole internet was cursing, the company's stock price plummeted, and headquarters intervened to investigate whether there was any use of authority to seek improper benefits for Vanessa. Vanessa's traces of flaunting wealth on Instagram, the luxury gifts she showed off, and the high consumption places they frequently visited, now all became evidence, stimulating the public's nerves. Seeing his livid face, Vanessa was scared and cried, carefully grabbing his close corner to apologize. Honey, I didn't know it would be like this. I just love you too much and couldn't help but tell the world how good you are to me. Looking at his beloved crying like pear blossoms in the rain, Aiden, no matter how upset, couldn't vent his anger. He could only suppress his temper and comfort her. Forget it, it's not your fault. After we get off the plane, I'll arrange for someone to send you home first. I have things to do. As soon as the plane landed, without even waiting for his luggage, he put on sunglasses and a mask, rushed out through the VIP channel like a fugitive, and drove straight home. Pushing open the door, there was no expected crying or mess. The house was as tidy as usual, even with a faint scent of lilies. I was sitting on the living room carpet, playing with blocks with our daughter. The sunlight streamed through the window onto them, the scene warm and dazzling. Wendy. Aiden's voice was hoarse, carrying the fatigue from the long journey. He rushed over in a few steps and knelt heavily in front of me with a thud, the loud noise scaring our daughter into hiding in my arms. I was wrong. Wendy, I was really wrong. But this time, you must help me. He was crying and snotty, completely disregarding his image, trying to grab my hand, but I subtly avoided it. He could only awkwardly prostrate himself, his forehead almost touching the floor, his expensive suit wrinkled into a ball. I know I've let you and the baby down. I'm a bastard who couldn't stand the loneliness. I was bewitched. But this time, you must help me. Aiden's incoherent confession was trying to soften my heart. The last time he knelt before me was 3 years ago when I discovered his infidelity. That time, he also knelt in front of me, crying bitterly, telling me he would never betray me again in this life. But in just a few short years, he broke his promise. "Wendy, if you don't help me this time, I'll be completely ruined. For the sake of our many years of relationship, for the sake of the baby." He suddenly stopped, his bloodshot eyes looking at our daughter in my arms, trying to grasp the last straw. "Baby, call Daddy, quickly call Daddy." He reached out to hug our daughter. I finally reacted, protecting her behind me and using my body to block his outstretched hand. I showed no intense emotions, no anger, no sadness, only a bottomless calm. Such an expression startled Aiden. "Wendy," he stammered. I picked up the wet wipe next to me and wiped away the tears that had spilled from our daughter's face due to fright, softly comforting her. Only then did I look up again, my gaze falling on Aiden, who was kneeling and begging, looking utterly disheveled. I realized that I didn't love him at all anymore. Now, in my eyes, he was nothing but a piece of irrelevant, disgusting garbage. "Aiden," I sneered, "is your pathetic act over? Actually, just a moment ago, I thought you came back because you were awakened by the netizens' scolding and decided to turn over a new leaf. I even quickly thought in my mind whether to let bygones be bygones. But what he was begging for was not my forgiveness, nor was he asking me to give him another chance. He just kept asking me to help him." Sure enough, Aiden choked, slowly got up, and sat on the sofa with tired eyes, running his hands through his hair. "Wendy, you should know that Vanessa and I were captured by the concert's infield camera. I don't know why it blew up so much. Now, only you can help me by coming forward. Can you issue a statement to explain for me?" I sneered, looking at him in confusion. "Explain? Explain what? That you didn't cheat, or that you don't have unexplained huge assets?" Aiden's face stiffened for a moment, but he still braced himself and continued, "Can you tell everyone that we have been separated and preparing for a divorce agreement, but for the sake of our daughter, we haven't announced it yet. I want to minimize the damage to Vanessa from public opinion as much as possible." Hearing Aiden's words, I frowned in confusion. Aiden is not a sentimental person. I don't believe he values Vanessa more than his career and reputation. He lowered his eyes, not daring to look into mine, and sighed, "Vanessa is pregnant. We had a checkup abroad this time, it's a boy." A sour squeezing sensation came from my heart, and I was in so much pain that I could hardly breathe. So, Aiden gave up custody of our daughter so readily because Vanessa was pregnant with the son he had always longed for. How ironic. I used one child to painstakingly save my marriage. Vanessa used another child to completely destroy my fragile marriage. I mocked myself with a light laugh. "So, you came clean to me before because she was pregnant? You couldn't delay any longer?" Aiden avoided my suddenly sharp gaze and confessed, throwing caution to the wind. "The doctor said I have oligospermia, her pregnancy is a miracle. Wendy, Vanessa is still so young, an abortion would be too harmful to her body. I have to take responsibility for her and the child. I originally planned to part amicably with you." "Part amicably?" I snorted coldly. Aiden nodded, just painfully grabbing his own hair. "I know I've let you down, let our daughter down. I can give you more in the property division, I can leave with nothing. I will never delay the child support. As long as you help me this time. As long as you're willing to stand up and speak for me, this matter will soon subside. There are so many news online every day, netizens won't keep holding on to me." Aiden finally relented, offering to leave with nothing. But I didn't feel the excitement I had imagined. I realized that what I wanted now was not just for him to leave with nothing. The corners of my mouth curled into an extremely ironic arc. I slowly stood up, looking down at the man on the sofa, his face haggard, begging me for mercy for another woman and child. The last trace of warmth in my heart completely cooled. I picked up the divorce agreement he had given me earlier from the coffee table, didn't even look at it, tore it to pieces, and scattered them at Aiden's feet. Aiden looked at me in astonishment. "Aiden, do you take me for a fool?" My voice was not loud, but every word was clear. I don't care how much dirty money you've hidden outside. I just want 10 million. Once I get the money, I'll immediately go with you to handle the procedures. The statement you need is not a problem either. Aiden looked at me speechlessly, and after a while, he said incredulously, Wendy, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. After more than a decade of relationship, you actually kick me when I'm down at this time. I sneered. Aiden, the last thing we can talk about is feelings. When you got Vanessa pregnant, when you allowed her to openly provoke me, when you took her to an overseas concert to show off your love and slap me in the face, did you think about our more than a decade of relationship? Aiden was choked by my calm questioning, his momentum instantly diminished by half, and he slumped back on the sofa, covering his face with his hands, his shoulders drooping. Just as he was about to speak, his phone rang again. After answering, Vanessa's coquettish voice came through. Honey, why haven't you come back yet? They say that if the father isn't around during pregnancy, the baby won't be healthy. Do you still want our baby to be born healthy or not? After hanging up the phone, I looked at Aiden leisurely, waiting for him to speak. He raised his hand to wipe his face and made a muffled, painful sound. All right, I agree. An hour later, I received the 10 million Aiden transferred, and he got the divorce certificate with me as he wished. Before parting at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Aiden looked at me somewhat dejectedly. Wendy, I know what kind of person you are. You'll keep your word, right? I smiled ambiguously, of course. Half an hour later, I posted a statement on my verified account. After much consideration, I have decided to dissolve my marriage with Mr. Aiden due to the breakdown of our relationship. Grateful for the past, we part ways amicably. Our daughter Chloe will be raised by me. Thank you, Mr. Aiden, for voluntarily giving up visitation rights. Figure 1, Voluntary Waiver Statement. The property division follows the supplementary agreement signed by both parties. The 10 million divorce compensation has been donated to a charity to help out-of-school children. Figure 2, Public Welfare Donation Receipt. Additionally, Miss Vanessa, the father of the child in your belly, I return him to you. From now on, there's no need to worry. A new chapter in life begins. I only hope Mr. Aiden will behave himself. The 9-grid high-definition photos were all screenshots of Vanessa provoking me on Facebook. The whole internet exploded. The divorce statement of the year, textbook level, topped the hot search. Netizens said of me, on the surface, dignified, in reality, every word draws blood. The ambiguous photos in the chat records were ironclad evidence. Vanessa was nailed to the pillar of shame as a vicious and scheming mistress, subjected to the whole internet's cursing and flogging. All her social media accounts were overrun, and netizens dug up her past history of flaunting wealth and collecting stamps, turning it upside down. At this point, even if Aiden explained that the watch on his wrist worth tens of millions was just a high imitation, no one would believe him. The whole internet cursed him as a typical example of moral corruption and extravagance, and his reputation was almost bankrupt. Netizens called for the headquarters of the foreign company where Aiden worked to intervene in the investigation. Aiden's personal scandal severely damaged the group's image. The overseas parent company paid close attention to this matter and directly sent an investigation team to pressure the domestic board of directors. Facing immense pressure, the board immediately launched crisis PR and quickly announced the dismissal of Aiden and Vanessa to cut ties and calm public opinion. Aiden's current reputation made it almost impossible for him to hold executive positions in well-known foreign companies or large enterprises that value reputation. His career suffered a devastating blow. Some netizens photographed Aiden unwillingly returning to the company to appeal, but he was directly blocked by security at the door. He approached previous partners, investors, and old classmates, but everyone avoided him. In just a few days, he was no longer the CEO everyone flattered. He experienced social death, the end of his career, falling from the clouds into the abyss of disgrace and being deserted by all. As for Vanessa, in his eyes, she had probably long since turned from true love into a source of disaster and bad luck. The willful coquetry he once loved now only annoyed him. There was not even half a bit of affection left. Aiden was not stupid. After calming down, he naturally figured out that the rapid spread of the concert screen was due to someone's behind-the-scenes manipulation. When he returned home again, he was unshaven, his expensive suit wrinkled like a rag, and his eyes were bloodshot. He encountered obstacles everywhere in his job search, even the headhunters who used to contact him frequently and bow and scrape now mocked and ridiculed him. Aiden threw his coat heavily on the ground. "Wendy, what exactly do you want?" His voice was hoarse, carrying the desperation of a trapped beast. "You were behind the concert video, right? And you hired the internet water army, right? You want to ruin me?" I didn't even lift my eyelids, calmly asking the nanny to take our daughter downstairs to play for a while. When only the two of us were left at home, I chuckled and said, "Aiden, you're joking. Wasn't it you who, for the sake of your love with Miss Vanessa, would rather abandon your wife and daughter and leave with nothing? I just let the whole world see your beautiful love. Is that wrong?" "Enough." Aiden suddenly grabbed my wrist, staring into my eyes. "Stop pretending. I know it was you. You hate me for cheating, so you retaliated against me. Wendy, do you have to be so ruthless? No matter what, I'm still the baby's father. For the sake of venting your anger, you don't consider the baby at all? You don't even leave me a way out?" I forcefully broke free from his grip, looking at him coldly and sneering. "Aiden, from the moment you abandoned the baby, you were no longer her father. When you were cheating and messing with women, did you think about the baby? All of this is your own doing. Don't you have love to live on? Aiden, I'd like to see, when you have nothing left, whether your precious Vanessa will wait for you to make a comeback." Aiden was stunned for a moment, just about to speak again, when he was interrupted by a knock on the door. I opened the door, and a group of people in economic investigation team uniforms stood at the entrance. With a cold face, they said to Aiden behind me, "Mr. Aiden, someone has reported to your original company that you are involved in multiple economic crimes such as embezzlement, breach of trust damaging the interests of the listed company, money laundering, and insider trading. Please come back with us to assist in the investigation." Looking at the arrest warrant in the police's hand, Aiden was so shocked that he could hardly stand steady. "Who reported it?" "I didn't do it. This is a false accusation." His gaze suddenly fell on me, and he shouted in realization, "It was you. Wendy. It must be you messing with me again." I didn't deny it, watching as Aiden was taken away, shouting hysterically. I closed the door without mercy. Indeed, it was I who reported him. Aiden was cautious, all his criminal records were stored on a portable hard drive, and the originals on his computer had long been deleted cleanly. I knew he had the habit of archiving important data since college. While he and Vanessa were lovingly watching the concert overseas those days, I opened his safe and obtained evidence of his economic crimes. That's why I asked the photography team to make sure to capture his ring and watch clearly. After all, he was someone I had loved for many years since youth, and I originally didn't want to fight to the death. It was he and Vanessa who repeatedly challenged my bottom line, forcing me to not part amicably. Since that's the case, merely suspending or dismissing him was far from enough. I wanted him to completely lose the halo and foundation he relied on to survive. I wanted him to pay the price of being shattered for the sake of his so-called true love and responsibility. After Aiden was taken away by the police, I went directly to the love nest he gave to Vanessa. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa stroked her flat abdomen and stepped back warily. "I have Aiden's son in my belly. If you hurt me, he won't let you off." I secretly mocked her naivety in my heart, thinking I would be childish enough to come to her door and quarrel with her. "Rest assured, I'm a civilized person, I won't touch you." I leaned against the entrance, my fingertips lightly tapping the marble countertop. "I just came to see what kind of house Aiden, who loves you so much, would give you. It's really beautiful, what a pity." Vanessa smugly curled her red lips. "It's a pity that your jealousy is useless. Aiden naturally loves me, and this house is in my name. You can't prove it's your post-marital property." I chuckled lightly. "Is that so? You don't know yet, do you? This house won't belong to you soon." I pretended to be surprised and covered my mouth. What? Aren't you Aiden's lover? Hasn't anyone informed you that Aiden has been arrested? This house was bought with the company's overseas reserve funds, and the board and the police are checking this account. Soon, this house will be recovered as ill-gotten gains. I advise you, if you don't want to sleep on the street, you'd better prepare early. Vanessa's face changed slightly, then she pretended to be calm and raised her chin. Don't try to scare me. This is impossible. It's just a few million. How could such a large group make a big fuss to investigate? Don't try to sow discord between me and Aiden. He's just temporarily unemployed and will soon find a new job. I knew why Vanessa wasn't anxious at all when Aiden was dismissed by the company and still shopped and bought luxury goods without restraint. It was just because she thought that even if Aiden was dismissed, the tens of millions in hidden assets were still enough for the two of them to squander. I didn't expose it, just said, you should know better than I do how many illegal things Aiden has done. Otherwise, try calling him? Vanessa called Aiden skeptically, but couldn't get through after several attempts. She then called Aiden's former assistant and confirmed that he was indeed involved in multiple economic crimes and had been taken away by the police for investigation. But this time, the evidence was conclusive, with complete original transfer records, and he was probably in grave danger. Vanessa clutched her stomach, her face pale, stunned in place. She slowly slumped to the ground against the wall, crying hysterically, "It's all you. Wendy, you vicious woman. It was you who messed with us online, that's why the company treated him like this. You're so vicious, you won't die a good death." Her makeup was smudged, and her whole face was ferocious. I just calmly held her chin and lifted it. "So Aiden likes your type, his taste is really poor. Since you love him so much, think about what you can do to save him." Aiden's mother called, crying and begging me to use the property I got from the divorce to save Aiden. I refused. The property I received was all from Aiden's legitimate and legal salary, without a single dirty penny. These were what I deserved, as he betrayed the marriage and abandoned me and our child. As for that part of the illegal gains, I suggested she go to Vanessa, who now has the Shin family's child in her belly. Aiden's mother hesitated. Even if she used all the money to save Aiden, what then? It would probably be difficult for him to earn so much money again in the future. Anyway, economic crimes would at most result in a few years in prison. After weighing the pros and cons, Aiden's mother gave up. A few days later, Aiden's lawyer contacted me, saying Aiden wanted to see me. This time, I agreed and went gladly. As soon as he saw me, Aiden shed tears. "Wendy, I'm sorry, please save me. I know you hate me, it's all my fault. As long as I can get out, I will definitely try my best to make it up to you and the baby. Can you fill the hole? That way, the company won't pursue me anymore. I will work like an ox and a horse to repay you." I shook my head. "Aiden, don't you know how much money you've given me? Such a big hole, how can I fill it? When you were hiding these illegal gains behind my back, you should have thought that there would be today." Aiden hung his head dejectedly. I was desperate and sought medical help recklessly. But now I can't find Vanessa at all my money is under her name. I hated him even more in my heart. He had only known Vanessa for a few months, yet he loved her so much that he transferred all his money to her name. "Aiden, you really are a great lover." But I didn't question him, the answer meant nothing to me anymore. I just looked at him mockingly. "Of course you can't find her, because she has already aborted the child and run abroad with the money. If nothing unexpected happens, she probably won't dare to come back." Aiden was stunned, his face painful and ashen. I then took out a stack of photos of Vanessa with other men, giving him the final blow. "Aiden, during the time Vanessa was with you, you weren't the only man. So don't be too dejected, that child may not necessarily be yours. After all, you have oligospermia, it's not that easy to get a woman pregnant. Oh, by the way, my daughter has nothing to do with you either. At that time, when you cheated, I was in so much pain that I had a few times with other men." Aiden stared at me fixedly. Then, his expression became hysterical, a painful anger I had never seen before. Wendy! You bitch! I've been with you for so many years, and you actually dared to betray me. I looked expressionlessly at his distorted and ugly face, feeling a burst of satisfaction in my heart. Aiden, what right do you have to accuse me? After all, you cheated first. I just did what you did, tit for tat. I thought we each did it once and would live well afterward, but you deceived me again. Since that's the case, everything today is your own doing. Do you think Vanessa really loves you? She only loves your money. And you were stupid enough to put all the money under her name. This is all your retribution, you deserve it. The visitation time was over, and I left with a mocking smile amidst Aiden's extremely desperate gaze. Actually, except for the fact that Vanessa aborted the child and fled with the money, which was true. The photos of her with other men were synthesized by me, and I said I had been with other men to make him wear a green hat and be a happy father, which was also made up to deceive him. Perhaps one day, he will know the truth. But what I want is for him to be unable to sleep at night in prison. I want him to realize that his life has been an extreme failure and to doubt his life. I hired a particularly skilled male escort from a nightclub with a lot of money to go abroad and approach Vanessa. Under the male escort's professionally trained bombardment, Vanessa couldn't stand the loneliness and fell. Under my instructions, Vanessa gradually became addicted to gambling, and it didn't take long for her to lose all the large sum of money Aiden left behind. At this time, the male escort also disappeared. Vanessa had no choice but to sell her body to pay off her debts. I heard that she was played to the point of dying by a customer with perverted tendencies and died in a foreign land. Not long after, Aiden's sentence was also handed down. For multiple crimes, he was sentenced to 15 years. I was not at the trial scene. I was afraid I would laugh out loud and be judged by the judge for contempt of court. Aiden previously served as CEO in a foreign company, and even his legitimate income was considerable. I am also very good at financial management and have accumulated a lot of wealth. Now, with this money, I am traveling and living with my daughter, and life is full of vitality.